Hi, how are you doing? This is Pastor Cheryl. We are doing kind of a thing today about ageism, a little sermon. And when I went to seminary, I went to Drew out in New Jersey. We had a thing, I had to take a class called um, Social Process. And Drew is known for this. It's known for that class on social process, which is about ageism, sexism, and homophobia. And um, and so that's a big deal. But it seems that everybody wants to focus on racism and sexism, but they don't want to talk about ageism. We do get older, you know. Um, Recently, I tried purchasing a puppy from a breeder up in Michigan or Minnesota, Sandy Ridge Collies. Okay, that's how we'll say. And she promised me the pup, and we had an agreement, and then she turned around and sold it to someone else. She blocked me, and then acted like I was bothering her when we had an agreement. You don't do that to people. That's bad business. You don't do that. Um, I am over 70. You would never know it by looking at me. Okay? I don't dye my hair. You can see there's a little gray in it. I don't dye the hair. I do wear just a tad of makeup. My grandmother lived to be 102. Mom lived to be 92. We felt that she got shortchanged. Because her mother lived much longer. Her brother lived to be, I don't know, like 96 or 98, something like that, and be Uncle John. So you really can't judge with ageism. You'll think, oh, they're going to hit 80 and die. You know, not in my family. You know, we just go on like Methuselah. But anyway, I wanted some of this as notes that I've made note of, and I wanted to read them to you. There's much in the media today about racism and sexism, but very little about the widespread, insidious, illegal, and the most socially accepted of all prejudice, ageism. Ageism is stereotyping, prejudice, discrimination against people on the basis of their age. It is seen as detrimental attitudes towards people of age and aging process. Discriminatory practices against people based on age. Okay. Policies that perpetuate stereotypes about people based on their age. Most commonly, ageism is directed at, of course, older people. There are many examples in society of ageism against the elderly, such as anti-aging products, jokes about getting old, 55 plus gated communities. I always thought that was unfair, that younger people couldn't get into those gated communities. Society hiring practices and attitudes concerning older people and technology. I returned back to undergrad for a second undergrad degree in art education. And, trying to get rid of that light switch back there. And so I went back about 15 years ago, and they kept saying, Cheryl, do you realize by the time you graduate, you're going to be close to retirement, you know? And I'm thinking, like, why retire? You know, why? Anyway, if attitudes were applied to different contexts, such as towards a person of color or someone from another country, it would be seen as racism. Okay? And then we'd holler. But when it comes to age, it's a socially acceptable. I caught myself wrestling with this issue as I stood impatiently in a grocery line behind an older woman counting her change, painstakingly. I remember once, it was quite a few years ago, where my ex-husband was having a fit because some old person was driving in front of him slowly on the highway. And he was just having a fit about it. And after getting to know Gary as long as I have, there is very little he doesn't have a fit about. You want to know why we aren't married anymore? It's because he has these temper tantrums. And I'm like, I can't handle that. It's like, I can't handle people that act like that. Yeah, he and I can be friends from a distance. Okay, it's hard to live with someone that blows up and screams and yells and carries out. It really is. It's hard to live with someone like that. Ageism exists in churches as well. It shows up in a church looking for new associate pastor or worship pastor. Yeah, the guy gets a little bit gray on top. You think you got to replace him. Some people gray sooner than others. If you notice, you don't see a lot of gray there. Okay. It's because my mother was like that, and her mother. We just don't turn gray. Not that often. How many times have search committees said, we want someone younger? You see that in a church, they're looking for a new pastor? Right, they're looking for a new pastor. They're looking for someone younger to attract young people into their church so that they stay longer. There's no guarantee that they're going to stay longer. The average member stays there 3 years. That's the average church member. Especially young people today. They have a hard time being consistent. With anything. With anything. It makes me angry at my generation for being bad parents. Okay. Yeah, you have to instill certain things in your kids. Honesty, integrity, and stick-with-itness. You have to instill these things and not to dote on them if they want to fly from one subject to another and do one thing to another, and they don't stick with stuff. They just don't. How many times have older staff been cut in the name of stewardship? And how many churches are intentional about investing on the spiritual growth of people over 50? I'm discovering a lot of my Facebook friends are not Christians. They openly admit this. I mean, I would have been embarrassed to admit when I was younger that I really didn't believe, okay? I kind of half-heartedly believed when I was younger, but it would be embarrassing to admit that I didn't believe. So you say, oh yeah, I believe. Oh, you're raised in a Christian home, you better believe, And so, anyway, but these people are admitting to me that they don't believe in anything. They live empty lives. Yeah, hollow, empty lives. They don't believe in anything. The biblical picture of the church is that of a unified body, a testimony to the world of truth and the gospel. There is no longer Jew or Gentile, slave or free, male or female, and old or young. This is Galatians 3:28. That should be the scripture for today, right? God's word condemns discrimination of any kind, particularly amongst believers. Jesus reveals that the greatest commands are to love the Lord with your whole heart and to love our neighbor as ourselves. This is Mark 12:30 through 31. As believers, we are all equal in God's eyes, with everyone deserving the same respect. This is Galatians 3:27 through 28, James 2 through 4. The Lord himself shows no favoritism. This is Acts 10:34 and Romans 2:11. The church is a place where older women are helping and teaching younger women Titus 2, 2 through 6. And remember, our school system is a place where women are the primary teachers. And principal, too. That women are running the schools. Women run schools. Teach the classes. You know, when I taught school, I noticed that my students, it was the little girls, they got the A's. They sat still and whatever. The boys just were hyper and running around. And so I would eventually have to send somebody to the principal's office, and it was most often a boy. They just can't sit still. I don't know. Their muscles itch or something. They just go wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And, you know, being a substitute teacher, they think it's fun to play a little joke and prank on the sub. Let's see. We are this Titus 2, 2 through 6. It's a place where we're all one in Jesus Christ. In contrast to the rampant ageism in our society, the Bible honors age because God practices high value on wisdom. Yeah, you get that with age. Wisdom is associated with the elderly and not with arrogant impulses of youth. Wisdom belongs to the aged, and understanding to the old. Job 2 through 12. So I don't know why this lady just didn't want me to have one of her puppies. I've raised a lot of them. Yeah, I've raised a lot of them, and a couple litters too. And I know where to take them to get their shots on discount. Gray hair is a crown of glory. It is gained by living a godly life. Proverbs 16 through 31. Stand up in the presence of the elderly. Show respect to the age. Fear your God. I am the Lord. Leviticus 19 through 32. It seems that respecting one's elders goes hand in hand with respect for God himself. Paul's instruction to Timothy was never speak harshly to an older man, but appeal to him respectfully as you would your own father. Treat older women as you would your mom. That is 1 Timothy 5, 1 through 2. This does not mean that God despises youth or he honors the elderly people, but a person who has lived a long life, dedicated service to God, walking paths of wisdom is certainly worthy of higher honor than the youth, has only just begun on their journey. To combat ageism, we first need to become aware of it in ourselves. To those around us, becoming informed by reading about aging and talking with older people about ageism. We become empathetic as we learn what people face as they grow older. Friends and family are dying. Occupation and prestige are left behind. Agility and mobility may be lost. We become engaged when we think through how churches can help people deal with depression, despair, and anger that sometimes occurs and as one ages. Well, you can see why an old person would be angry, right? Yep. Once you're equipped, you can help the church hold correct assumptions about ages in older adults. Here are some suggested questions to addresses. There are tangible ways your church can show respect to older people in the congregation and society and cultivate intergenerational relationships. It is part of your budget allocated to the ministry to seniors. Have you dedicated part of your budget, church budget, to seniors? Has your church created a division where there shouldn't be any? Finally, a word to those who are considered older. Challenge ageism when you experience it. Work against the stereotypes. Keep current with your skills in technology. Don't be guilty of trying to act younger. It looks ridiculous and people won't respect you. I've seen that, yeah. We try to imitate the young kids doing their goofy little stuff. You know, you can say, you know, when an older lady does that stuff, it looks really dingy, right? Learn what it means to age well. Now, first of all, we have a lot of wisdom. And we have a tendency to be more sophisticated. We went through the 60s. And I went into a doctor's office a couple months ago. And I was kind of shocked that everybody there looked older than me, but they couldn't have been older. A lot of people my age look older than me. So I walked in, and I just was curious how many people were my age. So I just said, I remember Woodstock. And everybody went, hear, hear, yeah. Huh? And let me know that they were my age. Okay. And I really cheered them up to say that anyway. And so, anyway, it's unethical to have, you know, like that woman made a deal with me to get a new puppy after my 14-and-a-half-year-old dog passed away. I think she had a heart attack. I'm not sure. It's just all of a sudden she's panting and turning blue and then just died right there in front of me. And, you know, you can't fight it. If they're going to go, you let them go. It's their time. And it's a sad thing. But there are others. Okay? I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.